So let's get into the mysterious case of the missing wrestling.
Yeah. So to me, it was kind of pros and cons because you miss wrestling, but then you get all the backstories from all the characters this season, as opposed to the first 2 seasons. So I think it was kind of a balance.
Yeah, especially for the first episode or 2, where you got this huge shift where you're out of the ring and you're in Vegas. So they're living the Vegas experience. They're partying. They're getting used to their new surroundings. So I was fine with it for the first episode or 2, but I was like, okay, this is a show about wrestling. Where's the wrestling?
Yeah, it felt like it took like the Breaking Bad method, where it's Breaking Bad's entire series is about the in-between moments. It's not about cooking meth. And I felt like nothing happened this season. Like,
And
what got
100%
accomplished?
is about cooking meth, by the way.
Well, it is, but like it's the in-between moments that make you care about everything else. And I feel like I didn't feel like a lot happened this season, but a lot of character development happened this season. But it wasn't just out there. And I think it's because we weren't in the ring all the time. There wasn't actual action. You had to like listen to characters talk, watch them interact.
Yeah.
But I think that also made the wrestling, because there was very few instances of wrestling in this season, and I think that made it even better, because those were the highlights to me. I was like, oh, the wrestling was really good in this show. But was it because it was good, or just because we didn't have it and they were teasing us with it? I don't know.
I went where I thought I was adjusting to like, this is a like totally different series. We're like focusing on character development, and as you've been talking about, like the moments in between. And then there was that switcheroo fight scene or match scene, and I was like, this is so fun. This is the most into the series I've been so far. And it reminded me that, yes, those moments in that character development is nice, but what this show does best is having all these women just in their absolute element. And I don't think I appreciated it more because it was so infrequent. I think I just missed it.
Yeah. And I think also, you know, when they moved to Vegas, they were doing the same show every single night. So if they were going to show us the same wrestling match every single episode, I guess, you know, it was smart of them to not include it, but it would have been nice to have more than just 2.
Is that like a meta commentary? Because we're sitting here being like, where's the wrestling? And they're like, well, it's the same show all the time.
They knew we were going to have this discussion. And
and I mean, this is the 3rd season now. You want the show to advance beyond the initial concept of the show. Like, we still had the wrestling, but we were developing some of these different characters, seeing them interact with different people, different situations. Different relationships are blossoming, so I thought it was fine. I really liked that. We got to learn more about some different characters than we had in the previous 2 seasons, but by the time we got to the 3rd episode and we got some of the wrestlers playing different parts, that was fun. It was a great change of pace, and like by episode 3, we're like, finally, it's here, and I thought it was a fun kind of exchange.
Yeah, I mean, you could chalk it up to emotional wrestling. Like I felt like there was more conflict between characters this season than there were the other 2. It seemed like every single episode, it's like, okay, these 2 characters are going after each other, or there's some sort of conflict. It was a conflict-driven season. So even though we didn't see actual wrestling, I feel like we did have a lot of character wrestling with their emotions and everything that was going on between them.
Yeah, and they kind of took a page out of Orange is the New Black's book, and they've kind of focused on each individual character for each episode, which I really enjoyed.
Yeah, and these, it's like a Jenji Cohen like production. Like, this is like, she's not hands-on as she is with Orange is the New Black, but you know, all female-focused cast. You know, a huge female ensemble cast. Like, it's great to see these female relationships, because outside of Orange is the New Black and, you know, a couple other shows here and there, you don't really have it. So I was excited to get that. You know, we had Ruth and Debbie. We knew a lot about them from the first 2 seasons, but maybe a little too much.
I'm over it. It's boring as hell.
But it was nice to see some of the secondary and 3rd level characters kind of get their moment. So I thought that was a welcome change. You know, I'm fine giving up a little bit of the wrestling instructions for sake of the character development.
Plus, it seems awfully likely that season 4 is going to put us right back in the ring with new and exciting fights. But let's go back to Ruth.
Okay. She's pointless. I'm sorry. Her and Sam both are completely useless in the season when they moved to Vegas, mainly because they spent the entire 2nd season how Ruth is directing every single match, and they're doing the same match every week in, week out, so why the hell is she there? Sam ends up dipping and going to LA, so why even have them on the show at all?
Yeah, it was frustrating. You know, it's kind of like, we talk about character development, but where was that for Ruth? That was totally lacking.
That's true.
And, you know, Alison Brie, great actress, you know, can do all sorts of great stuff, but I wanted more from her this season, and I was kind of disappointed with her character. And, like, it's fine. It doesn't always have to be positive and moving forward, but, you know, this season we saw her kind of maybe regress a little bit, if not just kind of plateau. So I was a little discouraged as a viewer because I liked the character, I liked the actress, and so I just had high expectations that kind of really weren't met.
Yeah, there's like getting stuck in a rut as a character, but like every single episode. Like, I don't know exactly what her arc is. Like we were talking about it earlier. Like, did she break up with her boyfriend? Like, I'm unsure of what's going on here with all of this. And the whole her and Sam thing, I was like, I really don't need that in my life.
I don't need them to force them together.
I think they have a little bit both ways of what you're saying, sort of about like the meta wrestling absence or whatever, where it's like her stagnation or spinning wheels, as we were saying earlier, seems intentional. Like that is, you know, as the character's written. So you kind of have to be like, okay, well, that's on purpose, but man, is it still frustrating. And it makes her so much harder to sort of root for and when she's such a central part of the show.
Yeah, I could relate to her in the sense where you have all these different characters kind of like realizing who they are or who they want to be, or they're still kind of figuring things out. And Ruth, it's like she doesn't know what she wants. She just knows she wants more than what she has. Like, she doesn't want to be in Glow forever. Glow was kind of like the pit stop before she was a big actress and she was back on TV shows or movies. And after doing this show that's re-upped, that's going to stay in Vegas, I just don't think she's happy with the direction of her life, and she's looking, seeking, searching for something, and it's just not there, at least not in the wrestling ring. So who knows what that means for season 4 for Ruth, but yeah, for season 3 it was a little bit of a disappointment for that character.
Well, she said that she didn't want the off-ramp in the very last scene of the season.
She needs to take it. She needs to take the off-ramp.
She's like, I don't have a road. It's like, she doesn't have a road. Like, you go back to the episode where they're getting lost in the desert, and she gave up the map. And I think that says a lot about her character, where she's like, wants to be a leader. Like, she directed every episode last season. It looks like she's going to take this leap forward to really take control, and she's literally giving the map to somebody else because she's like, well, I'm not the team leader here.
Yeah. And
I think that says a lot about her character. And while it's frustrating that she didn't really develop, I mean, I am at least interested in seeing where she goes next season, because she's going to go somewhere. And it's what's even more interesting is she's not going to be with everybody, it seems.
Yeah, which will be an interesting change of pace. It's probably her going to a lot of failed auditions, which is going to make for a nice montage, I'm sure. But
full episode.
Exactly. Yeah, another pointless full episode, not related to the story at all. The last scene of the season 3, where Debbie's confronting her in the airport, and she says to her, like, "Why do you continue to break your own heart?" Like, that is just
Don't you
a
wanna
great.
be happy?
Yeah, and it's like that's a great like just catchphrase for her. She just keeps doing these things, and it keeps failing, and she's not stopping.
I was interested in the way this season really sort of pushed how success can be limiting, or success can be not what you're looking for, and the way that they finally have this success and their show's getting extended, and absolutely nobody except Bash wants it to be extended. It's all sort of holding them back in different ways.
Yeah, especially Debbie. She was dead set against it. She wouldn't have the conversation about it. You know, she's being away from her little baby or toddler now. And, you know, some of these other people, they want to get back to their regular lives, I guess, so to speak. But just away from Vegas, it felt like, you know, if you go to Vegas you go for like 2-3 days. You don't go for 3 months or a year.
Can you imagine living in
and
Vegas?
Bash is saying, like, you know, we got to get back home. Like, this place is making us crazy. So I think there was a big part of that. But yeah, with Ruth and Debbie and some of these characters kind of figuring out who they are and who they want to be, and how like Debbie, very successful, but not happy. I mean, Bash, successful, his name's on the marquee, but he's not happy. He's looking for something else. Ruth, big time director. She basically replaced Sam. She's like the co-star of this huge production and not satisfied at all. So I could kind of understand that perspective, but there was no like big happy, like big send off like there was in previous seasons where like they do the show, it's a big hit, it's a success, it's picked up. Where it was just kind of like setting the stage for, well, now what?
Yeah, and I think it's a great kind of metaphor for Vegas as a whole, because I felt very like claustrophobic, because the entire season basically takes place in one hotel, and so you're in the same scene the entire season. You know, they didn't have a lot of external shots of Vegas, especially during the daytime, which is my favorite because it's the greatest hangover ever, honestly, looking at Vegas in the day. But I think they need to get out of that as a show in general, because I don't think it was good for them creatively. I think they had a lot of the same stuff going on each episode. And when they was based in LA, they were able to go and do different places and different things, and they weren't really able to do that in season 3. So.
And one of the best episodes is when they got out of the hotel and went to the desert.
Yeah,
that was one of my favorites. Just like when the season came out and I'm looking at the episode titles and the run times, and I see this like episode 6, like 46 minutes. I'm like, oh, this is gonna be a good one. It's like, they're going camping out in the Vegas wilderness. So I thought that would be a good episode, and I thought it was a mostly great episode, but that campfire scene, it was a little bit odd. But
that was uncomfortable. When
they were all kind of like broken up in their own separate little packs, I thought it was interesting. But yeah, that scene around the campfire, if we want to get into that I can understand why it was emotional. Like maybe the scene made people cry, but then others is kind of like cringeworthy.
Yeah, I think it was a very blanketed way to, and I know, Shea, you've talked about this, about, dealing with the fact that some of them are playing very stereotypical racist wrestling characters, but then they all cry about it and are like, this is horrible that I'm doing this, but then they just go right back into playing someone played Fortune Cookie, and that's very problematic.
My problem with the campfire was that it, I sort of mentioned this in our write-up, that it felt like they were just like parachuting into this conversation where it was a really great moment or look at sort of, catharsis and sharing, storytelling, and that moment of bonding. But as you mentioned, like it was all we got. It wasn't carried through sort of past that episode. It was only a little bit hinted at before. So it didn't really feel like they earned the emotional moment that that setting and the context could have provided.
Yeah, I honestly feel like they asked a bunch of viewers to take a survey, and they're like, what do you think of these names for these characters? They're like, welfare queen's kind of racist.
Yeah.
They're like, we need to address that somehow, but just slightly. And that's their way of doing it, and it just didn't really work well.
Yeah, I felt like the writers, they wanted to say something about topic X, Y, and Z, and they're like, well, this is how we have to shoehorn it in there. Like, it's been talked about for the first 2 seasons, like, welfare queen, the Beirut bomber, or whatever the exact title is. It's like, this is, it's not PC. And certainly, wrestling characters in real life, they aren't exactly that. But we forget they're real people playing those characters and the feelings that they have to, choke down to kind of do their job.
I think that stuck out to me because the first and second season did a good job of saying something. It's like we had something to say about society. Because there were times I was watching this, especially with the drag show, I was like, well, this could be happening. I forgot it was set in the 80s.
Yeah.
This could be happening now, especially with the things that they're dealing with. But the season was really littered to me with, we think we're saying something, but we're not actually saying something. Like the show starting with the Challenger explosion. Yeah. And that really didn't get addressed, and that really set the tone for, we're going to take on these big, big topics and maybe lightly touch on them. But, they ended that with playing with balloons, which is fair enough. National tragedies are different than, societal problems. But you can't wrap them up both the same way, where one hand you're playing with balloons and then you're all just hugging around a campfire and let's go back to work and do the same thing tomorrow. Yeah. And you didn't actually say anything.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I agree.
All right, so let's talk about what did work. I think we all know the headliner here.
Yes.
Debbie. Debbie worked.
Yep.
Yeah, Betty Gilpin is awesome. Allison Brie coming into the show, she was probably the most recognizable name, her and Mark Maron. I didn't know a whole lot about Betty Gilpin coming into season 1, but she is the reason why I watched this show. Yeah. She is fantastic. She is so sharp and sarcastic, and some of the lines she'll deliver or just the look she'll give. Yeah. I love the scene when the magician / server is trying to make his case, add me to your show, Bash. And she's just like, yeah, we'll let you know if we need more food. It was just, she's fantastic in everything she does, and playing the Supermom, every scene where, Debbie is, having to play Supermom, kills me. Just cuts to my core, so I loved it so much.
And I think it's actually really funny that she plays a character named Liberty Bell, and she has to put on a smile every time she's in the ring. And then she goes behind stage, and she's just, shooting the shit with everybody else, and is kind of very sarcastic, like you were saying, very crass, kind of doesn't put up with anything. It's hilarious to watch both sides of her.
The scene when she dressed down.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That was great.
Bash in the tub.
Yeah,
that was great.
Yeah, and what was the line that she said? She said,
more men need to go on vocal rest.
Yeah, that was a great one. That was great. She just tore into him.
When she talks to her ex-husband, when Randy takes his first steps, and she's just so overwhelmed and overjoyed by the moment. But then it's oh, I'm in Vegas, and I'm going to be in Vegas. I'm going to miss so many more firsts. And then it sinks in, those tears of joy turn to tears of sadness. And it was just that was some great ass acting. Yeah. Just give her the award, man. Just give it to her now. I know she's already nominated for season 2, but And we'll have to wait another year for the nominations to roll out for this season. But yeah, I think we are all in agreement that she is locked in.
Yeah, she's asked to do so much in terms of comedic and dramatic and everything in between, and just absolutely. I found the moments that she was on screen the ones that I was most reminded about why I liked the show and sort of kept me going.
Yeah, well, and also her story arc and struggling with being a woman who's a producer and trying to find her way in a man's world and having power and what that means. And then she has that relationship with that tech dude, and she thought it was like, we're partners. And he's like, no, you're just my girlfriend.
Yeah.
And then she steals his business from him. I'm like, that's a boss.
That was so ruthless and cold-blooded. Yeah, I mean, that's a girl boss move right there, to steal a line from a canceled Netflix show. But yeah, I mean, she's awesome, and she kind of blends in with other people's storylines. She was hugely emotionally supportive for Bash. I mean, she cuts him down in that bathtub scene when he's doing his vocal rest. But yeah, in the season finale, she's there like, hey, maybe this thing that you're imagining is the end of your career, the end of your life. Maybe it's not.
Yeah.
Like, maybe it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
And then she's like, well, hey, you got $11 million. Let's swoop in and steal my boyfriend's TV deal, and then let's catapult our careers into the next stratosphere. So, yeah, we all know about Ruth and Debbie, but how she was kind of pinging into other storylines and career arcs was really nice.
Yeah. Sure. All right, so extra credit. Who gets it?
Whoever was on the sound design for the baby screaming in the casino.
Oh my God.
Oh, yeah.
I was uncomfortable
that was
that
the
whole
worst
time.
thing
like,
ever.
I wanted to get up and go. I'm like, God,
It made me never want to
shut
have a
the
child.
baby
I'm
up.
sorry, it did.
It was incredible.
Yeah,
It's terrifying to watch.
Yeah, I mean, the fashion was insane. The showgirl set, I mean, Gina Davis, hello, bravo for you for wearing that ensemble. That was huge. I really like Sheila. We kicked this off with character progression and development. I mean, no other character progressed or developed or came out of their own shell as much as Sheila did this season. So we saw the transformation from Sheila the She-Wolf to Liza Minnelli to really coming out and embracing who she is. I thought the scene she acted out at the Libertine Ball in episode 9 was outstanding. It was one of those standalone, singular, great, outstanding moments that she just owned it. She nailed it. And, we talk about what to expect in season 4. I want to see what's next for Sheila. Is she going to go out on the auditions and acting and steal all these big parts from Ruth? Because I could totally see that happening.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons we got to see that Sheila transformation is because of a new character that was introduced this season, Bobby frickin' Barnes, which is my extra credit winner.
Yeah.
The scene when they're in the casino and he's basically reading Sheila and is like, you need to break away all of this. And then she just has a moment of I'm holding myself back. And not just that, but him being a female impersonator during this cabaret show in Vegas, during the 80s, it's very specific to that time.
Yeah.
And that actor, I don't remember what his name is, but it was just, it was phenomenal to me. He was great in every scene that he was in.
Yeah, like when I was saying, the show, the first episode or two, you're like, this is a show about Vegas and, the characters in Vegas. That was so Vegas, and I loved it. And you think about, well, this is 1985, 1986.
Yeah.
Right.
This is perfect. And I thought that character introduction was really huge and something that I was not anticipating or expecting at all this season. And it kind of leaves you floored because by the time you get to episode 9 and the Libertine Ball and the hate crimes and the hate speech outside that building, you're it takes you back to, really before the AIDS epidemic and crisis, before a lot of people that were watching the show were even alive. So, being old enough to be aware of what was happening in the late 80s and early 90s, it was, a real good commentary on what life was like to be, a homosexual man or, living that type of lifestyle. And there's a little bit of that with Debbie and Tex when she's like, I didn't think you'd approve of this lifestyle. Yeah. And he's like, he tells a story about his nephew who died at 24. And you're like, wow. It's you think but it's this affects every single person. And I thought it was just kind of interwoven in there nicely and delicately that you're it was just a really great scene and a really great episode.
Yeah, that's an example of the show having to say something and saying it well. It did in the first 2 seasons.
That was executed well.
Which made everything else seem really hollow, like the campfire scene. But then you get that scene at the end, Yeah.
And he was so much more than a one-dimensional character. I think especially when you think of the scene where he's auditioning to Bash, and then the way that his relationship with Gina Davis's character is really sort of built out into this. You can see that they've worked together for years, and like you know, shows come and go, but these two, you know, he's going to order tequila shots, and they're going to get through the interviews.
Yeah, there's history there. Yeah.
And every time he was with a different person from the Glow cast, he really came down to them on their level and kind of like broke them down, like you said with Bash, with Sheila. So it was really a refreshing thing to see a new character added that added something and wasn't just there.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Extra credit to Bobby Barnes.
Yes.
Yes.
I win.
Bobby wins.
Yes, you did.